can make it very soon. Oh my goodness, we're starting to get some really interesting questions. Oh, awesome questions. Yeah, ask the questions.
Rachel,
it's usually
maybe if we have a, sorry, I was just going to say, if we have one that's more sort of on the engineering side than the other terms, maybe
we could do that. Yeah. So if we had, I know there might be some engineering ones in here somewhere. So, oh, the one that Kevin asked maybe actually could be relevant to you, Tim, while we're waiting for everyone to get into the room. So Kevin was asking,
and Heather's just joined. There we go.
Yay, Heather. Kevin was just asking, general projects are available on D.O. Well, fantastic, woot. For code that runs outside of core, is it time to revisit the approach that the DA has taken to JavaScript licensing so that we can be more compatible with the larger JavaScript ecosystem?
That's a really, really good question. And I think there isn't quite a definitive, like, yes, we're definitely going to do that, or no, we're definitely not going to do that. But I think there's definitely a healthy interest, as we were talking even to prepare for this Q&A, in thinking about licensing and other integrations. So yeah, so I think it's something we're going to need some community feedback and input on. We might perhaps organize some discussions around licensing. You know, Kevin, I know you've served for a while on the licensing working group, and there's others who have opinions on that. And we even had a guest speaker, Heather Meeker, earlier in this week, who is an open source licensing expert. We may want to consult some of those folks. But yes, I mean, I think when we talk about both JavaScript components and even the project browser idea, maybe some license-related conversations are things we should have. And with that, I see that Heather and Dries are both here. So
yeah,
hey.
Welcome to the event.
Thank you.
You've reached the room.
I know, I was lost a little bit.
We have to switch from thing to thing.
Yeah, we do.
Absolutely, yeah.
Because
we use on the stage, we have a different system for doing things on the stage. I know, but welcome to that. It was a great Driesnote, so thank you very much. And you've created loads of great questions.
All right.
However, I want to start because of something that I heard about that happened the other day, actually. So I was very interested in some of the points that were raised at the Drupal Diversity and Inclusion's Hidden Histories of Drupal event on Drupal Fest the other day, especially around contribution. It certainly raised that the commitment by organizations to contribute to Drupal is an issue at executive level, and that we can see this, you know, like at previous DrupalCons, where people were booking flights home on the Friday when we were encouraging people to take part in contributions, rather than actually getting their people to be involved. I mean, I know I'm sure you've noticed how we've changed things a lot here at DrupalCon North America to bring contribution right into the heart of the week. But what other measures could we be taking to bring the importance of contribution to all levels of organizations that use Drupal?
Sure, yeah. I mean, it's a great question. It's kind of like an old problem in a way, right? Like, how do we get more organizations to contribute? So first of all, I love that we're experimenting with new formats, and we should applaud the whole Drupal Association for that. I think it's really cool to see. You know, I think, again, there's a lot of things we can do to help organizations contribute, from evangelism to helping them understand open source to explaining the benefits of open source, etc. You know, whether we like it or not, I think at the end of the day, most organizations, not all organizations, are coin operated. You know, they exist to make money. You know, like, I know it's not always, you know, a popular thing to say, but with that, it really helps to think through that lens. And I think that's one of the reasons why I've been advocating for the credit system, and why the Drupal Association is starting to leverage the credit system to really promote those organizations that contribute. That helps them win deals, that helps them hire the best Drupal talent, all of these things. And, you know, we're experimenting with these things too. And so I think we need to keep trying all of these things, from evangelism to trying to trailblaze, I guess, new things like the credit system and organizational certification, et cetera, Like, there's not an easy solution. There's not a one solution that fits all either, but we've got to keep focused on this though.
Yeah.
It is doable. So one thing I want to say is, if you think about, yes, the kind of coin operated perspective of organizations, but I've had the opportunity to be involved in several nonprofit organizations where we worked very closely with corporate entities. And if there's a dialogue that happens to get corporations to let people give volunteer time, and they give money and they support causes and they're embedded in their communities, there's a dialogue we can have when it comes to Drupal contribution, right? And it's actually an even tighter thread, because we're talking about being embedded in their technology, right? So it's not just a people community thing, but it's also, and is going to make your technology stronger and more secure and better, and your people, all the good things that we have to say. So I'm really passionate about this, actually, and have a lot of thoughts about how to do it. And if I wasn't trapped at home in a pandemic, I would have been on an airplane for the past year, literally going to talk to executives, not just about Drupal, the technology, but about the contribution piece of it and the community piece and how it all ties together. So I think we've got a lot of opportunity there to make it happen.
Cool. Have you got anything to add to that, Tim?
When it comes to making the business case, like within an organization, if you work for a provider and you'd like to contribute, but they don't have it as part of their company culture, I will say that in the executive roundtable that Heather and I and others participated in, what we heard from everyone who was an end user who was issuing Drupal RFPs is that they all require a contribution history from their vendors now. They told us, like, hey, we look for these specific projects. We look to see if someone on their team spoke about Drupal at DrupalCon. Like, those kinds of things are a way to win deals. And that's a great argument that you can make kind of up the chain in your organization to create that contribution culture.
Yeah, I know Pfizer's quite famous for that now, aren't they? So yeah.
I wrote a long blog post about this years ago too, makers and takers. I forgot the exact title, but in it I make a point that open source is a public good, meaning everybody can use it. And if I use a public good, it doesn't exclude you from using the public good either. An example could be radio. When I listen to the radio, you can still listen to the radio too. But one interesting thing is that leads, potential business, is not a public good. It's actually a common good, meaning there's a scarcity to it, meaning if I win a deal, you can win the deal. Like fish in the ocean is another example. If I eat a fish, you can eat the fish, right? And so that's why fishing is regulated. And so one of the things we can do is make sure that the leads, potential customers, if you will, people building or on a Drupal site, we want to really make sure that those leads go to those that contribute, right? Because
absolutely,
versus taking these leads to organizations that don't contribute. And there is something there that I really believe strongly in. Like, if we can route leads to those organizations that contribute, we'll maximize the amount of contribution Drupal gets. And I believe that these organizations are actually often, better service too, because they get help from those organizations that actually help build Drupal. So they're the experts in Drupal. And so it's kind of a win-win. And sometimes I feel like we're afraid to talk a little bit about these topics because they're maybe somewhat controversial, but there's so much more that we can do. There's so much greenfield, things that nobody else does. And honestly, Drupal is the closest compared to many open source projects to actually experimenting with these things. And that's exciting.
Very true. Yeah, I think we are doing some really amazing things. It's funny, actually, because we were talking about some amazing things in your Driesnote and contribution with regard to making better use and more detailed use of GitLab, which really excites me. I think it's a really great move. Jess Stratman brought up a really good question, though, around what that means for the whole community. And she's asking, how are we going to empower contributors who are not necessarily traditional developers if we move from Drupal.org to GitLab issue queues?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, go ahead, Tim. Yeah.
Sorry. No, I think that's a really good point, and I think there's a lot of important discussion to have about that. I think one of the things we said, and this was in the Driesnote and my video as well, is that an important part of what we want to do when we look at these additional sort of tooling changes is we want to ensure that we maintain things like the credit system, which is designed not just for code contribution, but also for non-code contribution. We also want to find ways to make activities happen in the place that most makes sense. Like right now, we are working around the way the credit system works by adding issues for these non-code activities, and we can make that much simpler. In Heather's presentation, she talked about our goal to sort of simplify how we track non-code types of contributions. But also, I think it's actually perfectly possible to do non-code related contribution in GitLab. They have a really interesting philosophy over there. The entire organization of GitLab uses GitLab and not just their development team, and does all their work in public. This is something Dries mentioned to me, and I went and looked through it, and it's crazy. Like, they draft blog posts that they're going to publish using their GitLab issues and all this kind of stuff. So they use it internally for that kind of work, which makes me feel better about them supporting those sorts of use cases. We have some good advocates on their team who are also thinking about non-code contribution and also thinking about organizational contribution. And so they've even got an issue open to explore the idea of this credit system and stuff like that. So I'll drop a link into the chat around that.
Anything to add? Anyone? Dries?
I think Tim answered it well. So I would be happy to go to the next question in the interest of time, but I think Tim gave a great answer. Yeah.
The next question from Sean de Armand flows quite nicely, because actually it's a word that I use quite often, which is non-code and code. And I know I'm quite guilty of it. Sean was saying, I brought this up in the chat during the keynote, but can we review the labels we use for code versus non-code contributions? Non-code draws attention to what people are not doing rather than what they are. I really like this.
Yeah,
I really want to hear all of your opinions on what we could be talking about here.
Yeah.
Dries, want to start?
They're contributors, right? And so I talked about it today and talked about changing that language, and we have to kind of bridge the language that we're used to the new language. But, you know, just that concept of other, right? They're all contributions and they all impact the project in a positive way. And I think that we will definitely have to make sure that we make clear what the different opportunities are and what skills are needed and what's going to best suit who. But I think, you know, it's contribution simply. And then we go from there as far as how we get people to the right opportunity.
Yeah, I think it's a great observation. We can definitely talk about it with the right terminology and language, and happy to lead by example. And I apologize if I used code and non-code in my keynote, and I'll change that next time, you know, because I love it so much. It's a great idea.
Yeah, I've got to admit I'm quite guilty of it myself, so I need to learn too. But we all need to change on occasions. That's good. Yeah,
all the time.
We all need to challenge ourselves. I think I want to go back to something that you were talking about in the Driesnote again, Dries, which was around that whole thing by empowering site builders. And who do we mean by that? Miro was asking, by empowering site builders, do we mean the same group of people as for up to Drupal 7, D6, 5, etc.? And then, oh, sorry, I'm going to read this question again. By empowering site builders, do we mean the same group as less than D7? And by then, shift of the target market for Drupal? So are we talking about a shift of who we're targeting by empowering site builders?
I don't think so. I think the reality is that building digital experiences and websites have changed a lot compared to Drupal 6, Drupal 5, whatever time frame you want to use. And it used to be that the main target persona was a developer, way back when, 20 years ago. A website was built by a developer, was maintained by a developer. Nowadays, you have different personas, and they're all important. Content, like a website, is often built by a developer. or by a site builder, depending on the organization. But they build it for a marketer typically, or a content creator, right? And so that's a very important persona too. And the reality is that in today's world, we need to make sure we have great experiences for all of the personas, all of the stakeholders in building and maintaining websites and digital experiences. So that means, you know, we have to cater for site builders, which in my mind, the way I define it is less technical people, or let's say people that do less technical operations even, you know, building a page through the UI, you know, using Layout Builder and, you know, WYSIWYG and dragging an image and etc. All the way to people that, you know, use Drupal to build the React frontend or a mobile application that, you know, consumes content out of Drupal, to a marketer or a content creator that has to publish, you know, a press release, let's say. Like, all of these personas are important, and we can only win, as you know, the project will only thrive if we're great for all of these personas, because all of them are part of the decision-making process of adopting Drupal and deciding to keep using Drupal.
Oh, fantastic. I'm going to try and fit in one more question, but we are really close to the end of time now. And it's from Hilmar, who is one of our judges on the trivia night on Thursday night, which I'm sure everyone will be looking forward to. And it's all about marketing again. So you mentioned marketing. So Hilmar was asking, the Discover Drupal initiative is a great idea, and we should be tapping into it right now, which sounds good, Heather. Is it more thought of as a base level education, or should we also think about something at a higher ed level? Mute.
The answer, my mouse was like, we don't want to participate, we're tired. So the answer is yes, yes, and yes, right? So here's where we're starting, because we have to start somewhere and make sure that we've got this right before we scale it. So we're starting with the pilot program, and it's for professionals that are pretty early in their career. So they may have varying levels of technical ability, but it's really looking at that site builder front end and back end member of our community. Now, where we want to go from there, I mentioned before the Driesnote started, when I had a chance to kind of talk about scholarship attendees and who's here at DrupalCon, we are doing outreach to higher ed and to organizations that work with students. And in fact, there are some really cool things happening in the community. Media Current, for example, was the connector for me to talk to Kennesaw State University, who has their first Drupal class this summer, and the students came to DrupalCon, and they're going to intern at Media Current, and we're going to have them for a couple days at the Drupal Association. So like, this is how the ecosystem needs to operate. I need 10 minutes to kind of sit down and figure out how we scale it and make this work across the globe. But those are all the things we need to do. And in an ideal world, we have several things happening. One is Discover Drupal scales, right? We have more personas that we're mentoring and training, and more people are involved, and it can be technical or non-technical. The other piece is we've got a really robust apprenticeship program across the Drupal ecosystem. I personally want the DA to be one of the front runners with that as a launch pad for young Drupal talent. And if anybody wants to talk to me about the new GitLab migration initiative, we can kind of do both at the same time with the DE&I lens, and everybody wins. And the next piece is that onboarding that doesn't exist today, which is, I'm interested in Drupal, or I've dabbled, now how do I get fully into a career and get integrated and do all those things? So we've got a lot of opportunity to fill all those gaps and create something in conjunction with the community. So I think, you know, we're starting somewhere now. I want to grow it faster than my body and mind will allow me to get there. But you're going to hear more and more about this. And I have to give huge kudos to Angie on my team, and to Drupal Easy and Evolving Web and Media Current, because we don't have anybody dedicated on staff to this. So we pulled together and said, we are passionate about this. Let's make it happen, and let's start thinking big picture. So anybody that wants to come join us to help scale that out, I would love the thought leadership and the person power and the contribution to make that happen.
That's wonderful. I'm sure Hilmar would be very happy. Apparently, he's just texting me right now saying that they have 3 students here. at
Fantastic.
DrupalCon that have come from Iceland. So that's fantastic.
And let's not lose all this talent that's here at DrupalCon this week, right? So how do we further engage and get them into the community and help them become contributors? So we have to be able to find that continuity. So it's not a one and done engagement, but it's really sustained.
Absolutely. And Irina Zak has just mentioned that actually there is a BOF taking place tomorrow, Musings about open source. This is about forgotten user site builder. So that could be an interesting one to watch out for. You might want to pop along, Dries.
Yeah,
say hello.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay, well, we're already 3 minutes over this session as well, so we probably should close out. But thank you to you all. I shall see whether I can export. Can we export questions? I'm not even sure, and see whether we can follow up on some of the ones that have not been answered.
Yeah, worst case,
So
folks can you can ping myself or Rachel or Tim in the personal chat here. You can find us. Y'all know how to find us on Twitter. I know that much. You can find us in Slack. Ask us lots of questions because we want to collaborate and help. And there's a lot of things going on, and Dries added some more today. So we've got a lot to do, and the community is going to be essential in collaborating with us.
Thank you very much, all of you, for your time. And thank you to everyone for their attention, because we've got 130 odd people in the room, and all of your great questions. See you later. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, all.